Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. I have not made a video in a really long time, and I haven't had the opportunity to talk about The Boys Season 5 at all yet because I took a giant hiatus from YouTube. But that being said, I've been watching it. I've been really enjoying it for the most part, and this most recent episode has been incredibly divisive on the internet. There's been a lot of people saying that it's a really terrible episode, that it's a really bad filler episode, and then there's been a lot of people saying it's one of the best episodes of The Boys that they've ever done, and I'm here to kind of talk about why I think this episode is so divisive, and I kind of wanted to do it by talking about what makes this episode such a great episode, because I'm on the fence about whether or not I would consider this the best episode of The Boys they've ever had, but I will say one thing that I will 100% say with confidence is this is the most episodic episode of The Boys they've ever had. I feel like for the most part, The Boys does not do an incredible job of having a specific story for each individual episode. A lot of time, the way that The Boys seasons play out is the very beginning of the season, they kind of set up one kind of like MacGuffin thing that they need to do by the end of the season. And then it's just the boys versus Homelander trying to get to whatever the MacGuffin is. And every single season is basically the same rinse and repeat. Huey and Annie have relationship troubles, but by the end of the season, they're in love and it's okay and everything's beautiful. Kimiko and Frenchie have relationship problems, but by the end, they're okay and they're in love and it's fantastic. Butcher is such a monster and everybody hates him. And oh my God, I can't believe he's, seriously considering killing a bunch of innocent people if it means killing Homelander because that's the only thing he wants to do. Oh, but Huey reminds Butcher of Lenny, and so it kind of brings out the humanity in him, and Butcher's actually a good guy at heart, and it's so frustrating that the show, which I love, right? I gotta say this right now, I genuinely love The Boys. I think that it is a very good show, and I think for the most part, I like the fact that it's very unpredictable. A lot of characters will get killed off in ways you wouldn't necessarily expect, and I think that that's something that they've always done relatively well. The death sequences are usually relatively good. They usually hit. They do a really good job of making a commentary about different political things that are going on in America, and I think that they're doing a lot of things well. But when you look at the overall plot of The Boys, Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, Season 4, it really is just rinse and repeat the exact same thing over and over again, and it's to a point where this episode to me is so good because it's so refreshing. I think that part of the reason a lot of people do not like this episode is because it's so different from any other episodes of The Boys they've ever done, because like I said, it's a very episodic episode of television. The main plot of this episode is, hey, what are these characters actually wanting to be doing right now? Because so far Season 5 has really been like Homelander's season. I think for the most part, you go back and you watch all of the seasons of The Boys, Huey's clearly the main character for Season 1, and then at some point it switches over to Butcher, and then it's basically Butcher for Seasons 3 through 4, but this season has really been focusing a lot more on Homelander and what Homelander's mission is and how evil and just off the rails he has been, and I think that it's really good to take a step back before we get into the final 3 episodes and kind of remind us hey, what is the Seven's deal? What is everybody who's on the Seven? Why are they there? What is their mission? What is their purpose? Because aside from the Deep, who's been there since Season 1, we don't really know what most of the characters who are on the Seven are really getting out of being on the Seven, aside from just, well, they're famous, but that doesn't really give us much. So I think that this episode being kind of the episode that sets up, hey, this is why everybody who's on the Seven is on the Seven. This is why everybody who's close to Homelander is close to Homelander. And I think that it also does a really good job of characterizing some characters before they get moments in the upcoming episodes where they're probably going to be put in situations where they could potentially die, or two characters are probably going to be at odds with each other. And beforehand, it'd be I don't really care if these two characters fight. But now, because we know each of their backstories, I think it will be a lot more interesting. So we're going to start off at the beginning of the episode and talk about Firecracker, because I think that Firecracker, Valerie Curie, absolutely fucking stole this episode. I think that she's absolutely phenomenal. Something that I've really been enjoying about superhero media this last couple of weeks is the religious allegories that they're bringing into superhero media and stuff, because I'm not a religious person, but I do think that that is always an interesting thing when it comes to superheroes, is they have their moralities, right? There's characters like Batman who are I can't kill anybody, and that's his moral code, and we don't really always have a specific reason for why these characters have these moral codes. But then you introduce a character like Daredevil where he's Catholic and he's religious, and that's part of the reason why he does things the way that he does things. I think that is cool that The Boys are actually touching on that. They have Oh Father, and Annie used to be religious, and Firecracker is a very religious character, and this is the first time in the entire show that they really dove into religion at all, and I think that they do a really interesting job of doing that. I think that the overall story with Homelander basically deciding that he is God is a really interesting thing, because obviously people who have been around for forever, they've been worshiping specific gods for forever, they have beliefs of what God does and what God's purpose is. And when you see somebody who is just going around maybe like saving a couple of people occasionally, and he's out here like, yeah, I'm God now, obviously people who have been following religion their entire lives are going to have a hard time falling in line with that. And I think that it was really interesting the way that they showed Firecracker's struggle throughout this, because she is somebody who actually genuinely has faith. She's somebody who believes in the Lord. She believes in a lot of the religious stuff that she learned growing up. And I think that that is such an important thing, because in this show, there's a lot of characters who don't get a lot of development, whether it be they don't necessarily have a moral code. All we know about them is their flashy personality. And like even Firecracker, when we first met her, Sage was very quickly to be like, you're putting up a front. You're not actually like this. What are you like? And then she basically explained that like she just oversells this religion stuff so that she can be a lot more famous. And it's a very interesting thing, because this character's Firecracker, her journey has always been just like doing whatever it takes to become famous. And it's nice to see that at the end of the day, she hasn't just been spewing this religious stuff for no fucking reason. She's somebody who actually believes it. She's somebody who's lived it her entire life. She's somebody who used to go to church, has a big relationship with her old pastor, and is basically able to actually be the person she is today because of her religion. And I think that that's an interesting through line, because she potentially could have actually been a hero. She potentially could have actually been a good person. And it's a great antithesis to Annie, who was religious. And part of the reason why she is such a good person is because of that religion and that upbringing in the church, where she was like, oh, I gotta be nice to everybody. I want to be a hero. I want to actually save lives. And I want to do something that makes the world a better place. I like the fact that there's the two sides of it, where Annie became an actual superhero and she's actually doing things to try to make a difference, whereas Firecracker took kind of the easier route of exploiting this religion and using all of the years of experience that she has with religion and just kind of letting it take over this side of her that makes her just famous. And I think that that's a really interesting story. I will say I'm a little upset that we never really got to see Firecracker and Annie interact. I don't know if they ever interacted last season, but I think that that's two characters who head to head would have been really interesting. But that being said, I really like the stuff that they did with her character in this episode. I think that they did a really good job portraying her emotions. That actress did such an incredible job. And I think in particular, something that I really like about it is she's somebody who has to act with her facial expressions a lot, because she's a character who's very over the top and over dramatic, and she's very expressive. And you have to tell that she has to put up this front that she believes everything that she's saying on her teleprompter. In reality, she is dying inside. And it's kind of very interesting to see her kind of like officially sell her soul to be a part of the Seven and be a part of the VOD. And it's really interesting when she does her final monologue talking to Homelander, because she basically has nothing left. And her being kicked off of the Seven means that she just threw away her entire life. And now he's like, oh, well, we don't want you on the Seven anymore. Get out of here. So she threw away everything for this specific reason. And then she lost that specific reason. I thought that was beautiful. I thought that that was poetic. I thought it was really interesting. I like the way that they killed her off, because truth be told, I think that if she just got her head lasered off or something like that, or Homelander just like really quickly killed her, it would have not been as impactful. I think watching him slowly press her head into a spike until she died, and then the credits coming up with just the sound of her body on the ground was very, very good. Very eerie feeling. You definitely felt that in your gut, and I liked that. I thought that that was a really great death sequence in the show. I think that for the deaths that they've done so far this season, they're nailing them. I think so far every single one of them has been pretty good. So we start off with her, and I like her story, and I like the fact that her story comes full circle and it ends up being the final part of the episode as well. But we get five character vignettes. That was the first one. We have the next one, Black Noir, which I like this one being the second one, because it's not nearly as important. It's not doing anything to really like push the story along, but it does answer a lot of questions that a lot of us have had, which is like, why is he silent all of a sudden? He doesn't seem to be narcoleptic. Is this the same character from season 4? And you find out that he is. And he's just a really passionate actor, and he really wanted to portray Black Noir and do him justice. And so he's really gotten into character. But on the side, he's going out and he's trying to live his life being an actor, and he's still He's still pursuing his dreams, despite the fact that he, you know, is a part of the Seven, and even if he can potentially get this like Broadway show, he's probably not gonna be able to just easily leave the Seven to go do this Broadway show. I think it's really interesting. I really like that. I think that that's a very cool character arc and character decisions to give him. And I really like the fact that they build up the fact that this is the thing he really cares about. He wants to do this theater production. And the Deep, being a dumbass, decides to kill the director for that specific play that he is with. And somebody who is like the Noir 2.0's best friend, basically, or like one of the only people he cares about, just got killed. I'm now so excited to see what happens with that, because I already thought that the way that this show is probably going to be ramping up was that Black Noir and the Deep were probably going to fight at some point. I imagine that was probably the thing that was going to happen, is that I actually don't think Homelander is going to kill either of them. I think that they're going to face off randomly and they're going to kill each other, or whichever one of them survives is going to barely survive, and then Homelander is going to be like, why the fuck are you guys wasting my time? Or he's just going to be pissed that they're like, doing random shit that they shouldn't be doing, and he's going to kill whichever one of them lives. I could be wrong about that, but this entire season, I've been kind of thinking that that's where that's leading, is the Deep and the Noir are going to fight against each other. And it was at a point last episode where I was like, if they were to fight right now, I don't think I would give a shit about it. I genuinely don't think I would care at all, because, yeah, the Deep's an asshole, and you want him to die, and you want him to die in a way that's kind of hilarious. I really hope that his death sequence is fucking hilarious. But Noir hasn't done much. We haven't gotten to know Noir's character, so I like the fact that we get like a small 10-minute snippet with him living his best life, trying to be more assertive and trying to like, stick it to the man and, basically be like, hey Deep, you're an asshole. I'm gonna upstage you. And I like the fact that they have this little, competition going on, and I think that it's really funny because it's the kind of competition you'd expect when they're like trying to fight over who's going to be Homelander's right-hand man. But Noir has already pointed out to the Deep that you're not going to be his right-hand man now that Soldier Boy's here. Soldier Boy's always going to be his right-hand man no matter what. It's not like you're going to be Homelander's top dog. And so the fact that they're both like fighting it out to try to like be like a more prominent member of the Seven, when neither of them are going to be like one of the top 3 members of the Seven, is really funny. I actually really like that. I think that that's a cool dynamic. And now I'm actually more excited to see where that leads, because like I said, going into this episode, I was like, if they fight, it doesn't matter. Now it kind of matters, and that's awesome. The next character we get a little character snippet of, we get Sister Sage. This is one of the few parts of the episode that I will say is a little bit on the weaker side. And part of the reason I say this is because so far, one of my favorite characters throughout this entire show has been Ashley. And I feel like everything they've done with her this season so far has been incredibly, incredibly lackluster. I think that she's probably going to get killed off trying to do some really cool heroic thing and kind of switch sides at the very last minute. And I'm excited to see where that goes and how that leads. But I think that so far, everything with her getting powers has been underwhelming. I think that everything with her potentially being vice president and having some kind of power there has also been relatively underwhelming. And overall, I do think that this show, this season, has done a really bad job of, usually The Boys, you do a really good job of seeing things from like the bystanders perspective, like just regular people who are living in the world of The Boys. You're not getting that much this season, except for the scene with, I believe Chris Daly is the name of the actor, the scene where Annie goes to see her father, and then they have like a couple of scenes together where they talk about the state of the world right now and how insane everything is. But you don't get to see it firsthand as well, and I do think that that's kind of a missed opportunity. Usually The Boys is a little bit better at it, and I also don't like the fact that we don't get to see much about like the president and the fact that Homelander is basically ruling the country. What does that mean? We don't know, because right now he's trying to basically become the Pope, which I think is fucking hilarious that he went from, I just want people to worship me, to, I am God. There's no other God. It is me. Okay. I love it. I think that that's extreme, and I think it's great, and I'm really enjoying everything that they're doing with that. So the Sister Sage stuff of it all, her final plan being, I just want everybody to die. I'm just kind of pushing it along because I want everybody to die. It's kind of underwhelming. I could see that be something that she's just telling Ashley that because she's trying to manipulate Ashley into like turning on Homelander, and she knows that that's not going to work out very well, but it's going to potentially buy time for the other characters who are working on the virus or something. I don't know. I still hope that at some point in the next 2 episodes, some absolute crazy twist happens and we find out that Sister Sage's plan was a little bit more detailed and she just wanted to get Ashley out of the picture. I don't know. We don't know that for sure. We'll see. As of right now, her whole plan just being like, I want the world to be destroyed so I could read peacefully. That's okay. That's kind of understandable. Next one, the next character vignette we get Terror. And this is where I think things are really, really interesting, because Terror brings a really interesting perspective to the boys as a team that we don't regularly get. I think that for the most part with the boys, you're constantly seeing like, okay, Butcher is butting heads with this character is butting head with this character. They're always all fighting, and something that's really interesting about this vignette is they're all working together and they're all doing whatever they can to actually help protect Terror. And I think it's a really interesting thing that, once again, these characters do work well together, and they do really care for each other, and they do, when it matters, come together as a team and work really well together. And I think that that's a good thing that they were showing with this snippet of Terror, because notice they did like 5 vignettes. 4 of them were for characters who are a part of the 7, only 1 for the boys as a whole, and they decided to do it from the POV of Terror, which I thought was a great thing, because Terror, absolutely innocent. He's very similar to how we meet Huey at the beginning of the show, and how Butcher decides he needs to take him under his wing and he needs to protect him at all costs because he's just this innocent person. And I think that it was a really good way of kind of showing things that the boys want what's best for innocent people. Like, obviously, right now, Butcher is so like, yeah, we could do a genocide. It's okay. We could commit a genocide. It's going to be great. I like the fact that we have a couple of characters who are in the boys who are kind of agreeing with that sentiment. But I also like the fact that people like MM literally saved a superhero in one of the last episodes, and he kind of understands that a lot of superheroes weren't wanting to be superheroes. They were too young when they were given the, compound V, and there's some good people out there, and you can't just assume that because everybody has superpowers, they all deserve to die. I think that it's a really interesting conflict that they're building up, and I like the fact that through this interaction with Lenny accidentally eating chocolate and them all having to, fight together to save him, and Butcher kind of being reminded that there are things in life that he cares about and that not everything deserves to die. It's an interesting kind of way to kind of bring it back to the fact that he's like, you know what? Yeah, if we find V1, we can give it to Kamiko, we can give it to Annie, we can try to save them. And I like that. I think that that's a really interesting way to kind of humanize him again before we go into these last 3 episodes where a lot of people are like, he's gonna turn evil. And I'm like, I don't think he will. I think he will die a hero. I think that, obviously, in the comics, he goes full evil, and once he kills all of the Supes, he kind of turns on the team, and he does a lot of crazy shit in the comics. We're not talking about the comics. I think that they're not going to go down that route. I think that he is probably going to potentially kill, Homelander, but I don't think that he's going to completely commit a genocide. I don't think the show is going to take it that far. I don't think that MM would let that happen. I don't think that French would let that happen. I think that overall, there's a chance. I've seen some people theorizing that he's going to be the big bad, and that, Homelander's going to die at the beginning of the finale, and then Butcher's really going to be the bad guy who the boys need to fight until the last episode. I don't like that. I really hope that that's not what they're doing. We'll see, but I really like the way that this vignette for Terror just kind of revolved around the boys being a team, them working together as a unit, and them wanting to save innocence, because that's overall what their goal has always been. Now, the last vignette, we got the Supernatural Cameo Fest. And I have not seen Supernatural, so I didn't get to enjoy a lot of those references or Easter eggs or any of the things that were happening. But I do really like this scene. I like anytime, they get big actors to come in and pretend to be themselves and just be like snootier versions of themselves. I like the fact that Homelander is like relatively normal throughout a lot of these interactions. I love the fact that when we go into the secret bunker and Mr. Marathon's showing them around, and there's just like a giant shelf that has a bunch of baby oil, and even Homelander's just like, dude, what are you doing? That's disgusting. I think that that's funny. And I part of the reason why I think that that's funny is a lot of people, having this debate now is a little bit harder, but a lot of people used to debate who the worst person on the 7 was, and a lot of people would be like, duh, Homelander. But it's like, it could be the Deep. It could have been Lamplighter, because there's a lot of stuff in the earlier seasons where it's like, they used to traffic high school aged girls into Vought Tower so the Deep and Lamplighter could have like little parties with them. Homelander's never done that, right? Aside from the one instance with Becca, he's never really been that kind of like sexual person who he's like, oh, I need to go have sex right now. And it is a really interesting thing because they like jokingly call him, he's my asexual weirdo in this episode. And for people who don't know, that was a Supernatural reference, because I've seen a lot of people be like, he's not asexual, he fucks Stormfront, whatever. We get that. That was a callback, which is why they specifically use the term, he's my asexual weirdo. That being said, not the point. But overall, I just really like this little side quest with Soldier Boy and Homelander and them kind of working together and them being a team, because I do think that that's a really interesting dynamic. And obviously, I think that these are two people who are too egotistical to work together for long periods of time. So I like the fact that we're getting some dynamics of them actually working together and being able to be a team for the time being. And overall, Soldier Boy is just being the fucking GOAT. Every action sequence we've seen with him this season has just been fucking fantastic. I cannot wait for him and MM to face off. If him and MM don't face off, I'm gonna be livid. But that being said, overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I think that they did a lot of things well. I think that they had a lot of character arcs and a lot of character development in this episode, which is part of the reason why I think a lot of people who just watch The Boys for the same rinse and repeat things over and over again might not have liked this episode, because a lot of times the show just focuses on the main characters. They focus mostly on Homelander. They focus mostly on Butcher, Huey. Obviously, the majority of the boys get a fair amount of screen time, but all of the other 7 members, we never really get to know much about them. And I think that that's such a missed opportunity, because it's cool having these characters who have these different powers and getting to sit in their boardrooms and figure out how they're, coming up with their evil plans and stuff like that. I think it's fun. I think that it's a really good time. And I like seeing the way that these different characters are interacting with each other, because Oh Father is fucking fantastic. I'm a huge Hamilton fan. Seeing David Diggs whenever the first episode came out, I was like, no way, that's fucking Lafayette. That's crazy. But his range is just absolutely fantastic. I love how outlandish of a character he is, and I think that he's somebody who probably doesn't have a whole lot going on for the rest of the show. Like, I think that obviously he's basically like the main person who's being their like what's the word? Like propaganda machine. He's going out and being like, hey, we love Homelander. We love Homelander. Homelander is the guy we're going to praise. We love him. Praise God. Praise the Lord. This is our Lord now, Mr. Homelander, sir. And I think that, him being a kiss-up is kind of fun. But I also could see it also ending with Homelander randomly killing him off because he's not praising him well enough. Because Oh Father, I think, also to an extent has some of that, like, well, I did believe in God and Jesus before this interaction. But I don't know. I'm very excited to see where the show goes. I'm really liking the episode so far. I really hope that the next 3 really do a good job of ramping things up, because I do think next episode is going to be relatively basic. They're going to go find Bomb Site, find the V1. There's going to be a lot of drama with Bomb Site. The Homelander's probably going to kill Bomb Site. So at some point, it's going to get brought up that Homelander fucked Stormfront. They're going to get into a fight. I don't know. It's going to be a great episode, though. But that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe and stick around, because later this week, I'm going to be making a video about potentially this next episode of The Boys that's coming out this upcoming week. And I'm definitely going to be making a full season review of Daredevil Born Again Season 2. I've been watching that. I've been having a really good time with it, and I'm really excited to see how they wrap that one up, too. But that being said, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out. Pow.